And one of the things Sonya and I have done through Crew is do this CliftonStrengths assessment, and we help students and staff learn more about themselves and how God wired them, how you're just naturally gifted from birth, really the gifts and the talents and the strengths that you've developed over a course of a lifetime. And they show up in your life in a lot of ways. Sonya, I can't see the next slide, so just keep me. If I talk too much, just go to the next one. So we're going to do a little game here, and I want you to go. You probably already know this, but if you go to the participants, you can raise your hand. You can answer a question for us. So I am going to read these, and I want you to raise your hand if they're true about you. It may not be exactly true, but something generally true about you. So has everybody figured out how they can raise their hands? Raise your hand. I know y'all already know all that. Actually, I'm not seeing it. Is it on the participants?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either.
It's gone. Patrick, what happened to it?
You just click participants. You should be able to click. It's maybe under more.
Oh, it may be under more.
I don't see a raised hand, but I see a thumbs up.
Yeah, just do a thumbs up.
Maybe it's because y'all are hosts.
Yeah, do you guys see it?
It's under more. If you just, on the more, there's a clap. Do y'all see it?
They all have the raised hands now. It's because y'all are co-hosts. That's why.
Okay, great. Okay, raise your hands or clap or give me a thumbs up or some sort of signal. If this is true about you, you talk to people in elevators, airplanes, grocery stores, and wherever you go. Okay.
Yeah, we've got some.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yes, this is so true about me everywhere I go. Okay, everybody get to put their hand up? All right, so about 4 or 5 of you. Okay, you may unraise your hand. Okay. Raise your hand if you have a color-coded or otherwise organized closet.
Can't raise my hand virtually.
Super. Okay. Few more. Sonya, you have an organized closet?
I do.
Oh, okay, good.
Does that surprise you?
A little bit, yeah. No. Okay. That's great. Okay, raise your hands or thumbs up or whatever if you write down a list of things to do and you actually stick to it and you do them. Awesome. Okay. The next one, raise your hand if you make a list of things to do on weekends. Okay. Super. All right. Raise your hand if you need to pick someone to race while you're driving. You know, you're driving along and you're looking for somebody to race you down.
That sounds kind of dangerous.
It does. Yeah.
Or if you're jogging and you're motivated by racing with someone.
Yeah. You want to beat someone in something. Yeah. Okay, a couple people. Virginia and Dana, they like to drive fast. Okay. The next one is raise your hand if you ask too many questions.
Or if you've ever been told that. Maybe truth is you don't really ask too many questions, but maybe a teacher or a parent told you that at some point.
Right. Okay. And then the last one, raise your hand if you push that elevator button to remind the elevator that you're there and you're
That's hilarious.
Somebody muted me. Okay, awesome. Sonia, you muted me. You're already talking too much. All right, great. I want to say, okay, so what that exercise shows is if you clapped or you put your thumb up or whatever, what you said yes to says a lot about what your top 5 talents are. And hopefully you'll be able to just learn more about those tonight. Now, this is going to be an overview, guys. When Sonia and I teach seminars, this is a 2-day seminar. 2 days of 5 or 6 hours a day. So we're going to cram everything that we know into the next 45 minutes. But really, in reality, we're just giving you an overview of what StrengthsFinders is and how you can learn more about yourself. We're not going to go over your top 5 talents. You have those in your materials. When you took the CliftonStrengths assessment, you have the your top 5. And if you pay the extra, whatever it is, $50, you can get all 34 in order. So one of the things that we're going to try to bust this myth that this faulty line of reasoning that everyone thinks just like you do. We sort of proved that that exercise, because not everyone raised their hand when you raised your hand. So that's the first faulty line of reasoning, that everyone thinks the same way you do. I discovered that was not true when I got married, that my husband did not think the same way I did, and I was shocked and a little disappointed too. So the second faulty line of reasoning is everyone has the same talents and strengths that you do, plus they got some better ones or some that you don't have. I've heard so many times people say, I got all the boring talents and she got all the good ones. So it's not true. We're going to try to bust that myth that everyone does not have the same talents you do, and they didn't get extra ones, great ones that you did not get. All right, and the third one is when someone says something to us, they are talking about us. In reality, the truth of that is usually they're talking about themselves. So my example of that is I have lots of examples because I'm married to someone who makes lists and checks them off. I don't do that. I make lists, but then I lose them. I don't know what I do with them. But so the other day we were going to on a trip, and he was leaving a week before me, and he left me a list of things to do. And had I not known that this was faulty line of reasoning, I would think he were talking about me. He made a list and told me to lock the house when I leave, turn off the basement lights, make sure the iron is not plugged in, make sure the coffee pot is turned off. Okay, so was he saying to me, you are irresponsible and you're going to leave your house wide open for every criminal in the Tri-City area to come plunder through our house? No, what he was saying to me was, I need to make a list of the things I do, and I need to have them checked off in my brain. So if I know you're doing them, I'm going to check them off. So he was really not talking about me. He was talking about himself. Okay.
It was a very humorous list, though. We laughed and laughed.
Yes, I have it. I kept it forever.
Don't leave the stove on. That was one of them.
Yeah, don't leave the stove on. Like he thinks I'm going to cook while he's gone. It's crazy. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Okay, next slide, Sonia.
Okay, sorry. I'm having trouble advancing slides. There you go.
There you go, blank slide. Okay, so this very briefly, I want to say that I wish I'd have known all of this stuff about me when I was your age, because I didn't understand myself. You may have a better understanding of yourself than I did when I was your age, just because you have more opportunities for that. But when I was at the University of Alabama, I was involved in crew there, and I signed up to be in charge of our winter conference. Now, back then, it was a big conference that went over a greater geographical area, and we had a very famous musician coming to our conference, and none of you know him, but his name was B.J. Thomas, and he sang that song, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Anyway, Mark's parents were at this conference. So I was in charge at the University of Alabama I was a student, And my job was to recruit students. My job was to handle the money. My job was to line up the transportation, assign roommates, you name it. It was my job. Well, some parts of that job, I exceeded the expectations. I could recruit just about anybody to go with us. And then other parts of that job, I failed miserably. The money part. So back then you had to write a check and turn it in. I would be walking through campus and people would hand me a check and a registration form, and I'd stick it in my backpack or put it in my pocket, or they'd hand me cash. I had no record keeping ability at that time to be able to handle the administrative part. And of course, I was 19 years old or whatever. The administrative part of this conference. So had I known what I was really talented in, where my strengths lie, I would have said, hey, well, let me do this part of the job, and let's get Sonya to do this other part of the job. So I'm so happy that y'all are just sticking your toes in the water of Strengths Finders. It's incredible material, and it's really up to you how deep you go. You've got, on that website, you've got so much information. Okay, a brief overview. This is Don Clifton. He's the father of CliftonStrengths in the 1950s. He went on to be named the father of strength psychology. And he noticed a problem, because if you've studied any psychology or had any psychology class, you'll notice that it's a study of what's wrong with people, you know. But Don Clifton wanted to know what's right with people, what's good about people, what makes them successful. So he focused on what made people successful and not what made people fail. And he studied it for 50 years. I mean, the man needed a life. I mean, for 50 years, he took all these surveys, and he bought the Gallup company. If you know what Gallup is, it's a polling company. And he threw all the information after 50 years of studying high performance achievers. He was looking for one thing they had in common. Like, all successful people had a few of the same strengths. That was his hypothesis. So he threw it in the computers, and it spit out some really valuable information. So his original hypothesis was that people that are successful have specific success strengths that make them successful. Like, they're all strategic thinkers, or they're all communicators, or whatever. But he was proven wrong in his data. What he found out was that successful people understand their talents and their strengths, and then they build their lives around them. And also that successful organizations don't just accommodate how people are different, they capitalize on the differences of others. And that's really the way God created us. I mean, he knitted us in our mother's womb. He created us to be an individual and with our own DNA and with our own set of talents and strengths. The key to success is to fully understand how to apply your greatest talents and strengths in your everyday life. So if you can get a grasp on what your top talents are, don't focus on the ones that you don't have. Focus on the ones that you have and build those talents into strengths. And in your everyday life, you're going to be able to have better ministries, be more fulfilled in your jobs, and feel more, successful the way we define success as believers. People that focus on using their strengths are 3 times as likely to say, I have an excellent quality of life. And they're 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs. So what is the return on this investment? Gallup studied nearly 50,000 businesses in 45 countries, 1.2 million employees, and 22 organizations. And he found that it increases employee engagement if they're working in their strengths. It increases the productivity. It increases the overall profit of the company. It decreased turnovers. People stayed because they found joy in using their talents, and it decreased safety incidents. People that are using their strengths, they can actually look forward to going to work. My husband will say that he's never worked a day in his life, and he works hard all the time, but he loves his job so much, and he uses his talents and his gifts in, I would say, 80% of his job. And so he looks forward to his job every day. People that work in their strengths have more positive than negative interactions with coworkers. They get along with people better. They treat others better. They tell their friends, hey, I work for Crew, come work with us. It's a great company. They achieve more on a daily basis, and they have more positive, creative, and innovative moments. Okay, so when he studied those 50,000 achievers, and they threw all the information into the computers, this is what came out: 34 different talent themes. So what's interesting about that, if you take those 34 talent themes, there's more than 33 million potential combinations of having the same top 5 talents as someone else. Now, we've seen people that have 4 of the same in a different order, but it would be extremely rare to find someone that had the same talents as you in the same order. It really speaks to your uniqueness because each talent affects one another. And these 34 talent themes were affirming and aspirational words that described you. And here are those words in alphabetical order. So the 34 talent themes, down from achiever down to woo. And your top 5 are included in that. So as you look through that list, you can notice, okay, that your top talents are there, okay? So they put those talents in different categories just to help explain how they work. The categories were relating, thinking, striving, and impacting. So you may have talents that help you relate to others. So later on, they changed that wording. And the relating talents are talents you use to build relationships with people. The thinking talents are those that you use for strategic thinking. Your striving talents are the ones that you use to execute things, to get things done. And the impacting talents are the ones you use to influence other people. Okay. And there's a difference between talents and strengths. I've used both of those words, but there's a big difference. A talent is a naturally recurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. Now, we have lots of naturally recurring patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior that aren't productive in our life. But if you have one that is productively applied, then that identifies it as a talent. But it's not a strength. If you'll notice, the name of this company is CliftonStrengths. You may have the talent of communication, but you may not have developed it into a strength. And a strength is where you have the talent, you build the skills, the knowledge, you study it, you develop it, and then you use it in your life. Then it can become a strength. And the definition of a strength is a consistent, near perfect performance in an activity you love doing. I've done it so many times I didn't even need to see that.
Sorry, there's a delay.
Okay. A consistent, near perfect performance in an activity you love doing. That is the definition of a strength. And everyone has talents, but you need to develop those talents and understand those to develop them into a strength in your life. An example of a talent could include easily and instinctively starting conversations. And I do that everywhere I go. I have talked to people in Target. I talk to people everywhere. I talk to people on airplanes. It's just easy for me to do. For some people, it is not easy to do. So what does that say? It's one of my top talents. It could also be, an example could be thinking in an orderly or timely manner. Another example could be being able to easily influence others. Hey, come go with me on this conference. You'll love it. It will be one of the greatest things that's ever happened to you. And some people have talents that they're able to see patterns in data. So these are naturally recurring. Oh, one more. Consistently having a positive outlook on life. You know, just being positive that everything is going to be okay after this coronavirus. Okay, so a strength is a talent plus skill plus knowledge plus use, and that makes it a strength, which is a consistent, near perfect performance in an activity you love doing. Now, when I learned my top 5 talents, probably none of them are real strengths in my life, but I've been able to study, read, dig deep into them, and figure out how to make them strengths in my life. Okay. So again, the 3 major fault lines, everyone thinks the same way we do. They do not. Sonya and I are best of friends. We do not think the same way. Everyone has the same talents we do, plus what we see in them that we didn't get. That's also a faulty line of reasoning, not true. And when someone says something to us, they're talking about us, when in reality, they're probably just talking about themselves. Now, are we getting ready to move in? What's next? Okay, anybody have any questions? Speak up, unmute yourself.
We'll get into specific, the different areas and some specific strengths in a few minutes. So
Yeah.
So is this CliftonStrengths, because you talked about like developing your talents and developing your strengths? Is this one of those kind of like the IMDb where you need to take it about every 5 years to see if things change, or?
No.
Okay.
No. It's not like the emotional intelligence stuff that could change, throughout the year. Supposedly, it's like your personality. I don't know if you study the Myers-Briggs, your personality is formed by the age of 3, and it does not change. I'm always correcting people when they say, well, I used to be an extrovert, but now I'm an introvert. No, you just don't understand yourself. Or you were in a situation where that was squelched or whatever. With your talents, and I've taken it twice, and the first time I took it, it was correct. It's a lot of times people retake it because they think, oh man, I really think I have this, or I really wanted to have discipline and I don't. Supposedly they don't change. If you took the assessment in a situation where you were truly yourself when you took it, and you weren't putting yourself in a role of a student or a worker or whatever, who you are naturally, then you probably got close to the results. And you can get your top 34, and you can see what your top 10, you can hone in on your top 10, and that's what I've done. So
yeah, the only exception to that, they say that the first time you take it really is the most accurate, but there are exceptions. One woman said, this just doesn't seem like me, and they talked to her, and she was actually undergoing chemo for cancer, and she'd had a death in her immediate family, like within the last month, and she took the assessment, and they said, oh yeah, you need to take it again. But for most people, the first time you take it is the most accurate, because you're not usually trying to trick it quite as much as we naturally do when we take it again. So
okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we get more specific here?
Yeah, so I've always wondered this, and I think y'all answered the last time or have shared this before. How does this sort of play off to when, we read things in the scriptures, like when Paul talks about boasting in his weaknesses, sort of not, how do these things how does StrengthsFinders play off of sort of that idea of us sort of trusting the Lord, for our weakness?
That's a really good question, Patrick, and we need to develop a little more. We need a slide for that. But I think one thing that Cara kind of said, but I wanted to hone in on a little bit more, is the success language. Because Don Clifton actually didn't just study people that we kind of think of as worldly successful. He didn't just study CEOs. He studied people who were really good in their fields. He studied, actually, hotel maids was one of the categories, teachers, all just a very wide swath of, at the beginning it was America, and now they've done a lot of international study. But so when we say success, we don't mean just rich and famous, or running a a large Fortune 500 company. But I think what Patrick is talking about is no matter what we're good at, that's not our hope, and that's not what we trust in.
Mhm.
We trust Jesus. Our greatest strengths are not anything that we bring to him as brownie points to get us favor with God or to that make us a better Christian. All our relationship with God is grace. And so we're often tempted not by the things we're bad at, but by the things we're good at. We're tempted to take the things we're good at and make them idols or abuse them in some way. We always say, use your powers for good and not for evil. All of this, all of who we are needs to be brought under the Lordship of Christ. And we need to realize that it's not my great ability to research like Patrick Martin that gets me points with God. It's all Jesus.
Mhm.
So even my greatest strength is a weakness when it comes to, relating to the Lord.
And it could be an area of pride also in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely develop it that way.
So that would be a really good thing for discussion, if people wanted to follow each other.
And let me say this I think Sonia's up next, but we are certified through a different company that uses StrengthsFinders material. But if you want like one-on-one coaching with your strengths, I think we don't make money off of it, but I think it's like $50 where we can run all of your results. It gives you a lot of really good material to go through. So if you ever want to do that, then let us know. We love to do it. I mean, we love talking about this stuff. So
okay, I'm gonna fly because we're behind.
We're behind. Yes.
So CliftonStrengths. So we use the term StrengthsFinder. The name was changed to CliftonStrengths. So we're used to StrengthsFinder, so we flip back and forth, but it's CliftonStrengths now. And they have categorized these talents in 4 domains. And the first one is executing, and they're listed there. I won't read all that to you, but these themes are the workers. They tend to get things done with speed, precision, and accuracy. They put in the hard work now, so when it's time to move, they're ready. Putting ideas into action is the strength of this domain. So I'm going to give you 2 examples in each domain, and we'll sort of go a little more in depth. And if we had time, I'd love to raise your hands if you have these, but I think we probably don't have time. So achiever is the first one. Check it off the list is their quote. They have inexhaustible energy to accomplish more and more each day. They're energized when faced with mountains to scale and horizons to reach. Makes me think of the old Superman cartoons. And they continually create physical and or virtual lists. That's Cara's husband, Earl, is an achiever. They're driven to do more simply because there's always more to do. And they may need to schedule down some downtime to avoid burnout. The last bullet point on these slides is a little cautionary statement. All of our strengths also have a little bit of a downside sometime. So there's the little naturally driven achiever. And this is the Core Clarity, the company that we are certified with, has these natural statements that I threw in here.
If you put a little gray wig on that ant, he would be my husband. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That's mine too. Mine is an achiever also. So a ranger is another one, and it maybe isn't quite so self-explanatory by the name. They say, I think I'll try it this way. They magically marshal resources, configuring and reconfiguring for optimal efficiency. So they're kind of thinking through what they have and shuffling it around in their head all the time. They orchestrate people, plans, and complex, multifaceted projects. They have their advanced planning is a huge advantage. It identifies potential options. They're tactically adept at managing in the moment with organized flexibility and logistical finesse. And sometimes they need some parameters and deadlines because they'll just spend all their time planning. And sometimes they need someone to spur them to action. So they are naturally resourceful. He's moving all those things around. That's the arranger. So the influencing domain, they're listed there, and these actually are more rare. When you look at where they show up in everyone who's ever taken the assessment, the influencing are the most rare. So don't feel bad if you don't have influencing or you only have one. It doesn't mean you're not a leader. It just means you lead in different ways. But these themes enable individuals to sell the big ideas. They're able to take charge, speak up, and be heard. They're extremely helpful when you need to reach a broader audience or meet a bigger goal. This can be both internally with your team. CliftonStrengths now is very focused on building healthy teams. So there's a lot of team language in these descriptions now that they've added. So they can be helpful to build that team or to external constituents, and they tend to influence forward. So they're like leader. You can look at those descriptions. Command, they're like the field sergeant out in front. So an example of that is maximizer. Let's make this exceptional. The maximizers in your life, you have probably said at some point they're a perfectionist. They pursue excellence. They focus on taking good to great. They're not content with good. They want it to be great. They mobilize others to challenge limitations and turn their talents into strengths. They strive to get the most out of every opportunity, interaction, and every moment. They recognize raw potential, and they absolutely refuse to accept anything less than a person's best. So sometimes they need to learn when things are good enough and they need to move on, because you've probably learned this by now. You can't, quote, do your best in every area of life. It's like a budget, a time budget or a money budget. You have to say, I'm really gonna go for it in this area, but that means these other things have to slide. So that's a hard lesson for maximizers. There's our little maximizer ants. They're naturally excellent. Finding that diamond. Woo, I put this one in here. It was between this and another one, and I put this one in here because Cara has it, and she's already alluded to it several times, and I wanted her to sort of share her experience here. I love meeting new people. Woo, people with woo are fearless with strangers. They can talk to anyone, anywhere, about anything. They can draw other people out, especially in social situations. If you were on here at the very beginning, Cara was asking people questions. She's already asked 5 questions by the time I think of a question to ask somebody I've just met. They identify commonalities between people, build rapport, and then they connect those people. They're open, honest, and trusting, and they instantly share personal details and stories. They're the kings and queens of overshare. Their cautionary statement is they need to learn to set boundaries with others so their expectations aren't unrealistic. And what that means is, like, Cara has woo people have a lot of friends, but when she's with me, she makes me feel really special. Like I'm one of her very best friends. You can't have 50 best friends. So people can have a lot of expectations of woo people because they really do make you feel like you're a special person when you're with them. So that's a cautionary. Cara, any comments there?
No, I don't.
It's true though. She can talk to anywhere, anyone, anytime.
And
she has really good friends that she met in line at Target.
And I raise, crew staff have to raise their own funds, and I've raised support in line at Target before. So,
I mean, that's crazy, really. That is not common.
But can I just say the cautionary statement is this was true. This talent was true. I had this talent, but I could overuse it. I could. Some people don't want to be wooed. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want me to ask them questions, and I've learned to make it a strength and not a detriment. And this material helped me do that. So
yeah, that's good. They're naturally charming. See that ant's giving his ice cream cone, his second ice cream cone away. Yeah. Okay, let's look at the relationship building quadrant. So while certainly not the only themes that deal with people, these 9 themes have the innate ability to take the human component into the equation. They look at how individuals fit into the bigger picture and can create pathways for them to thrive. They make strong relational connections that bind a group together around a cause, idea, or each other. These are the people that when you're making a decision, oh, we're going to change our weekly meeting location to the other end of campus, they're thinking, but what about those people that now have to walk so far and they're not used to that? What about the people that have late classes? They're always thinking about the people. Our relationship matters. This is an example is a relator. Relators purposely forge deep, genuine, mutually beneficial, and ultimately lasting relationships. They go deep. They're devoted to enhancing existing connections, risking intimacy to build trust and loyalty. They enjoy working on small teams with trusted associates who share common goals. And they have these conscious or unconscious guidelines and rules to determine who their inner circle is. They're a little bit the opposite of woo, in that the woo is like a cruise ship, just everybody's my friend. And the relator is more like a sailboat with their 5 closest friends on it. So they both have good relationships, but they're different in how they go about forming them. And sometimes you see the two in the same person, which means they probably have that capability of woo. They'll talk to anybody, but their inner circle is tight, and there's these guidelines of how you get into their inner circle. Sometimes they need to reevaluate and revise their guidelines, though, in order to avoid excluding potential allies. That's kind of a businessy term, like avoid excluding potential allies. I would say in order to avoid excluding a potential great friend or, partner in ministry. There's our little relationship building relators. They're just the 2 of them talking intensely, loving it over a cup of coffee. This is obviously pre-COVID. They're getting together over coffee. Is South Carolina very shut down? We are still shut down here in North Carolina.
Well, you live in one of the hot red zones of Durham.
Yeah. Crew says that Durham is one of the red zones, and if you come here, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks after you leave. It's crazy. So, okay, another one is empathy. I know how you feel. Empathy is my number 2. So these things ring true for me. They instinctively read people, their moods, their emotions, and their motivations. That's not to say they are never wrong in those readings, but they sense when someone's upset, even when they're trying to hide it. They usually have an authentic, compassionate nature that draws people in. Their relationships are based on deep heart-to-heart connections, and they can often put other people's emotions into words. They're not always good at doing that for themselves, though, interestingly. And they need to set clear boundaries, both internally and externally. And that just makes sense. If a lot of people with empathy go into helping professions, counseling, nursing, medicine, those type things, but you feel those burdens so strongly that you can really carry that with you to an unhealthy degree. So, my dad's a psychiatrist. I know friends who have gone to grad school for counseling. They really teach you, and you have to learn how to separate from other people's problems, or they'll just bury you. So you can do that and still have empathy, still bear one another's burdens, like the Bible says, but then it also says to carry your own load. So it's just walking that line. So there's the empathy ant. He's naturally intuitive. So one last quadrant, strategic thinking. So when a plan needs to be made or a problem solved, these themes can help accomplish that. These people are constantly absorbing and analyzing information that leads to solid decision-making, whether it's solving a current problem or dreaming to overcome a problem of tomorrow. These themes can take a thought or idea and figure out the best way to move it forward. So learner is one. Actually, both Cara's and my husband's both have learner, so it's funny. Achiever and learner. They have an infinite capacity to absorb anything and everything new. They're lifelong learners. They love to acquire new skills, knowledge, and experience. They're really good in leading edge environments where learning is required. They find the journey to competence exciting. The destination isn't always relevant. Cara laughs. She's taken a picture of the books that Earl brings home from the library. He used to go to the library every Saturday, and he would come home with books like Birds of the Pacific Northwest. They live in Tennessee, mind you. How to Learn Mandarin in a Weekend. And she always says, I wish he'd come home with a book that says how to tile your bathroom, but he never did. It's just the journey is exciting, not the destination. So they need constant mental stimulation. There's your little learner ant, naturally curious. Okay, this is our last one. I wonder what would happen if a strategic, so it's in the category of strategic thinking, but there's actually a talent called strategic. They masterfully craft elegant solutions for complex problems. They process really fast. And so what they'll do is they'll see this reality they want in the future, and their mind just steps back and goes through all the steps we need to get there. They're big picture thinkers. They always have that end goal in mind. Interestingly, they don't really enjoy strategic planning processes. How many of you have been in a job or a class or something where you went through a formal strategic planning process? Have you done that? So some people love that stuff. Strategic people have already done it in their brain in about 3 seconds. And so the process of going through that with people is sometimes excruciating, which leads to the cautionary statement for them. They need to carefully communicate when sharing with those without similar levels of clarity. They're the ones who just want to scream duh in the middle of that planning process. So there's our naturally sharp strategic. So really quick, I want to look at, here's 5 in order. This is a real person. He has achiever that we've talked about, harmony, responsibility, context, and belief. And I'm just going to let you guys skim that really fast because I slow us down when I read it. But some of these, context is probably the least self-explanatory. They just kind of understand the present by the past. And then belief, as believers, we all have belief to some degree, but this person really defines them, certain beliefs, and doesn't always have to be spiritual. So who do you think this person is?
They're in this group. They're in this group.
Yeah, this person is in this Zoom room.
So basically achiever, make a list, get things done, harmony, help people in groups get along and stay at a peace, responsibility. If they say they're going to do something, they do it. Context, they look back into the past to see how it affects the future. And then belief, belief is like, this is what I believe, and I'm going to always believe this until you can show me differently. So.
Any guesses?
Oh, they're in the chat. They're guessing in the chat.
Oh, I don't have my chat open. Who are they guessing?
Well, you should, because they've been talking about you. Mark Bouchelon.
That is Mark Bouchelon. Absolutely. So, Mark, can you comment on that at all? Does that ring true for you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, all the stuff you said. Yeah, I mean, achiever, I have to be accomplishing or doing something to in some ways feel significant, which isn't a good thing. But yeah, it's just something that's always true about me. Harmony. Yeah, I like for people to get along. I don't like conflict. I can go on, but yeah.
Harmony runs strong in the Bouchelon family.
Mm-hmm.
As does responsibility, I think.
As does responsibility.
Discipline probably would be close up there, kind of with the responsibility, but yeah.
When we did y'all's team, I remember we said, now people that have both achiever and responsibility, they flat get things done. And we know that Mark did very well in school. That's not surprising. But I said, you need to be careful because you can really abuse a person that has achiever and responsibility because they'll just keep doing and doing and doing. And if, you can keep kind of shucking them stuff and they'll just keep taking it. And Katie was sitting there going, she had her arms crossed. She goes, so she was confirming that. Okay, how are we doing? It's 8:59. We did want to leave time for questions. I do have a couple more of these to do. What do y'all?
If you feel like you have to log
Do
off
it.
now, it's been nice knowing you. But we got like 3 or 4 more minutes, maybe.
Okay.
I do have a quick question. Will we also be able to get these slides?
I can actually send them to you. Yes, I can do that.
We'll send them
Thank
to
you.
Mark,
You
and
can
he
send them
Yeah.
to me and I'll send them out to the group. Yeah.
Okay. And then I did want to get to at the end, so the Gallup material is really good. When we first started doing this, Gallup didn't have great material, so we went with this other company that does this.
And,
But they've stepped up
Gallup is CliftonStrengths. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gallup is the website you went to take the assessment. So you had to do a login, and I don't know if everyone downloaded their reports, but they're really good. And so I encourage you to do that. It's really helpful. So, okay, here's another person. Also has responsibility, discipline, which is pretty much what it sounds like. They're very disciplined. Harmony again, belief again, and developer. And let me just go through a quick definition of developer is they really recognize and cultivate the potential of others. And we talked about maximizer, who wants people to go from good to great. A developer gets really excited about little incremental growth. They really celebrate that. They are very encouraging people. So that this person, responsibility, like we talked about with Mark, if they say they're going to do it. Discipline, they naturally have a lot of routine and structure. Harmony, they like to look for consensus and they don't enjoy conflict. They really seek areas of agreement. Belief, they have those core values that are unchanging. You don't want to cross those beliefs. And developer, what I just said. So who do you think this person is? Any guesses? I can't see my chat, so y'all tell me.
It says P-Dog. Don't know who P-Dog is. Katie B.
Another Katie.
It is Katie B. Yeah, there she is. Katie, does that ring true for you?
Yeah, I can see a lot of those. None of those. I mean, it's funny to see them like written out, like just confirming what probably I picked up on, but like seeing them actually in a linear thought is, yeah, right on.
Responsibility and discipline are definitely two of her high ones. I mean, whether it's eating healthy or her quiet time or anything in life, she's gonna do it no matter what, kind of thing.
Well, and what's
That could
interesting,
be a bad thing the way that you made it sound.
Well, I mean, there's pitfalls. There's pitfalls to all the talents,
For sure.
Disciplined people can be, we called a rigid, and then people that have adaptability can be called procrastinators. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's negative, a non-positive word that goes with all of these.
So what's interesting to me on yours, Katie, is your belief is then sort of supported by that discipline. Like you create structures to accomplish what you think is important to accomplish. Does that make sense? So those kind of feed each other. Yeah. Okay, the next one I'll just tell you. This is Patrick. And I was laughing because at the beginning, he said he spent hours and hours on Wikipedia researching Alexander Hamilton after watching the first half of Hamilton last night. That's classic input. It's also my number one, so I resonate with that. But they have an insatiable need to collect and archive. They accumulate information, ideas, artifacts, and even relationships. Responsibility again, ideation. They just they're fascinated by ideas. They play with them, turn them over in their head. They're always thinking about them, and they can find connections between things that seem to be very different. Restorative people are drawn to problems. that can be problems in people. It can be old houses. It can be IT people are often restorative because they're fixing a system. It can be social systems. It can be like, I really want to fix the society that we live in today. But they're motivated by resolving a problem. And individualization, they're really intrigued and appreciate the unique qualities of each person. They have a gift for figuring out how people work and what motivates them, and then how they can work together better. So I joked, Amber, I don't think you were on yet, but I said, Patrick, you have individualization and Amber has consistency. How does that work? And he said, she's always telling me I'm treating the kids different, you know, like, and that would make sense. Like, you want to make sure everything's fair and everyone gets the same amount of ice cream, you know, or everyone, when they're 5, they have this bedtime and they don't get to stay up later till they're 8. But Patrick would be like, yeah, but he kind of needs more downtime. So he needed to go to bed earlier, but this one might need to stay up a little bit later because he needs special time with me, you know, whatever. I'm just making that up, but he's going to treat people differently based on what he sees the need is. So y'all see this in Patrick? I think he's already gone to his next thing. But,
Check it out.
I think this list was really helpful, and thinking about some of the things that frustrate me sometimes. Like, I just want to ask him a simple question about insurance, and he goes on how we need to, you know, review the whole system, and his restorative's like, we just have to fix it, and the whole system for our whole country.
Right. And you're like, I just want to know who to call. Right.
I'm not interested in that. Just answer my question.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that restorative and the input, so he probably has read a lot about and has, you know, done some research, so he knows a lot, and he doesn't know that it's not as interesting to everybody as it is to him. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so here are some of the Gallup resources that these are available to all of you because you logged in to take the assessment. This is just mine, and I want you to note I took this in 2007. And they still ring so true to me, and I'm still learning and developing them. So back to the question of should you take it every few years? I think, and barring extenuating circumstances, your first time is probably your most accurate. So your report looks something like this. You have your top 5 themes there. And then there's a really long paragraph about each one of them. And these are customized. They actually, like, mine would be different than Patrick's because of my other strengths. So these are really valuable. And these would be fun to, like, get together with a few people and talk through them and say, what did I learn about myself? What surprised me? What made me feel like, oh, wow, I've never thought about it that way. I've never put those words to it, but this is really me. That can be really helpful.
Patrick posted earlier, Sonya, in the chat that they're going to process through their top 5 during their discipleship appointments this week. So.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. That's great. So Cara also mentioned you can get your whole 34 in order. It was funny because when I found out you could do that, I was actually at my facilitator training learning how to do this, and I did it right there. And then later our facilitator trainer made this comment about, yeah, you know, it is really interesting to get your top 34. So I encourage you to do that. If you have input, you already did it while I was talking. And that's exactly what I had done, because it's like, it's information I must have. But you don't have to. I think it's $49 now. It's cheaper than it used to be. You absolutely don't have to, but it is kind of interesting. And before you do it, if you want to do it, I would encourage you to think, okay, what was I surprised wasn't in my top 5? Now that I've looked at kind of the definitions of all of them. When I did that, I nailed my 6 through 10. Like I said, I'm really surprised positivity isn't in there. I'm surprised learner isn't in there. And then what do you know you don't have? And those ones at the bottom, Katie, my discipline is number 32. I need you in my life. I need you to call me every day. Tell me to make my bed.
And
so,
she needs your adaptability in her life because they really do help balance each other out.
that's true. I do have adaptability. So adaptability and discipline are somewhat further apart. I'd like to meet someone who has both. But anyway, that's what that looks like. And it's just kind of fascinating. And then you get them put out in the quadrant. So this is interesting. If you look at this slide, you see my top 10 are really just in two quadrants. I have my number 10 over there in the executing. But I'd rather relate to people and think about things than actually do them, which is a gross exaggeration, but it's sort of true. So that's just to show you an example of, some of the materials you can get. And then we just always want to come back to these fault lines that, we just operate in our lives with the assumption that everyone thinks the same way we do. And even though we know it's not true, my husband has this phrase he always says, I would get this right on a true false test. Like, this, everyone doesn't think the same way we do, but I catch myself all the time assuming that they do. And then we think our talents come so naturally to us that we don't think of them as talents. And like Cara said, people say, well, that's a boring talent. Well, it's only a boring talent because it's easy for you. Other people are in awe of it. So we think everyone has the ones we have, plus the ones we know we don't have. So therefore, we're comparing ourselves and we're already one down because we don't have these fabulous ones that they have. Well, don't do that. Everyone's unique. Comparing yourself never got you anywhere. And this is what's great about you, and other people don't have your talents. And then that whole, when someone says something to us, they're talking about us. This is really say, okay, this is marriage counseling now. But when getting along with your roommate, your boyfriend, girlfriend, boss, and members of your family, you are probably internalizing something that they're saying, and they're saying it because of their unique strengths and talents, but you're thinking they're saying it about you. And Cara and I have the same examples because we have these achiever and learner husbands. But Rick will ask me, did you pay the light bill? Or, did you do a certain task? And I'll just immediately think, what does he think, I'm an idiot? Or does he think I'm irresponsible? But no, it's just, he's got to check that off in his head. So that is what we've got. We're really sad we couldn't do every individual, but in an hour we couldn't. But any questions?
I mean, literally, this was not even a stick a toe into your talents. I mean, it's just a sprinkling. This stuff is rich. You can go very deep with it. You can develop it. And I think one of the questions on the chat was, can't find it. Oh, Andrew asked, how do you suggest using this tool in our top 5 strengths to help find a job that fits us? Excellent.
I actually, I've been listening to a Gallup podcast. I'll send that to Mark too, and he can email it out. But they actually don't advocate. They say it's not what job you should have so much as how you're going to do that job. But I would push back a little on that to say there are certain jobs that require great precision, like a bridge engineer or a safety officer or someone in the, an air traffic controller or something. Someone, they need to have some sort of focus or attention to detail. It doesn't mean if you don't have focus, you can't do that job, but there's got to be something in there, consistency, something that lets them thrive in that kind of environment where you have to do things a certain way. You can't just make it up as you go. But I think read your Gallup reports. And there's also, you can download the Strengths Finder 2.0 book because you have the code, you took the assessment. And if you go back in there with your login, there'll be a thing where you can download that book, and it's really helpful too. It has like a whole page on each talent. But Cara, what else do you think about the job thing?
Yeah, I like that. And I think, like there's this exercise we like to encourage people to do, gain or drain. And so like, it's like figuring out what kind of things drain the living life out of you, and then what kind of things do you do that give you energy, So, I think what's going to help you find a right job for yourself is understanding who you are and where your strengths lie. And I think you guys are in a culture where you feel like you have to have a job that you get excited about every day. And I think my parents' culture and probably my culture was like, you just got a job because it provided for your family. So there's got to be some sort of balance in there, because you got to get a job when you graduate college. And but just, I think the number one thing is just understanding yourself will go a long way. Reading these definitions that were on the CliftonStrengths website. I mean, they're so
a lot of people now put their CliftonStrengths on their resume, and I think it's a good thing to do. It shows a potential employer that you know yourself a little bit, you've thought about yourself.
Well, I mean, they don't list their talents, like say I'm good at, and they list, my top 5 strengths are this. They will use like the words that describe a developer. They wouldn't say I'm a developer. Well, what the heck does that mean? They would say,
well, yeah,
I really love to see things grow and develop, or I love to help make broken down systems right. You use those words to help describe it. Yeah.
But you can actually put, my strengths are, and just list them.
Yeah.
And because a lot of employers now are familiar with that. And then, use that language when you're describing yourself. Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't see any others on the chat.
No.
And we've gone over, but we knew we would. I would just encourage you, if this is all you ever do on your strengths finders, and you've probably just wasted our time and yours, I would encourage you to spend time talking about it with each other or other people, or in your small groups, really digging deep into what this means and how this shows up in you.